Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. So today joining me is Simon and Neil, who are coming from Harvie, which used to be called Small Farm Central. Now, Simon grew up on a farm in southwestern Pennsylvania before pursuing a degree in information sciences and technology at Penn State University. After college, Simon helped a Western Colorado fruit grower expand his operation to include vegetable production in a CSA farm share program. The project grew to serve 5 area farmers markets in a 130-member CSA. Combining his passion for agriculture and technology, he started Small Farm Central in 2006, which now has morphed into Harvie. His goal, and the goal of Harvie, is to help more local farmers become more economically sustainable so they can support their families, take care of their land, treat their employees well, and thrive on their farms and in their lives. So Neil is a farmer and distributor who ran a cooperative of 30 farms in the Pittsburgh area for 10 years and grew it from about $50,000 in revenue to over $3 million in sales. He's farmed himself on a project for the last couple of years and is now part of the team at Harvie Pittsburgh as a general manager. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
So, Simon, I know a lot of people know you and know your background, but give us like a quick overview of what's now known as Harvie from the beginning.
Yeah, I guess Harvie really came out of some of what I was hearing through the farmer connections that we had, especially through Small Farm Central and Member Assembler, and we started a little Facebook page of CSA farmers around the country. So I started to hear from farms that they were having trouble finding members, retaining members, and really like creating something that was really sustainable for them, for their farm and for their land and for their business. And so I started to think about that, and I was thinking like, if we don't solve this, like our farmers aren't going to have a business, and so we aren't going to have a business. And so I really had I think one of the key insights of this was that CSA really wasn't working for consumers and customers and members. I remember hearing a farm saying that they thought that the market was saturated, and then I started to look at some data, and I used some USDA data and some of our own data, and I saw that it was about 0.5% of the U.S. 0.5% of U.S. households were CSA members, and I thought to myself, if we're tapped out at 0.5%, then like something's wrong. We're obviously not meeting the needs of our clients. And so, that led to me doing like about a year of customer research and eventually became Harvie.
Mm-hmm. So Simon, talk to me a little bit. You said, you started with Member Assembler, and we used that for a number of years with our members. And 1 year I kind of was like, I'm not using Member Assembler, went to one of your competitors and literally swore for the next year because how the other one was set up and not friendly for the farmer. It was really friendly for the consumer, but it was so challenging for the farmer to use. But talk to us about, what at that point Small Farm Central was trying to solve for farmers.
Yeah, I mean, Small Farm Central, I started that in 2006 after, like you said, after working on a farm. And the very initial thing of that was websites for farms. And I sort of knew that, and things have really changed, obviously, in the last 14 years. But that was the original thing. And my background was in CSA farms. So then Member Assembler came on a couple years later. So it's sort of this, websites and e-commerce and CSA tools all in one. But I think the difference between, one of the core differences maybe between what Harvie does and what Small Farm Central does, certainly Harvie is much more sophisticated. But for example, it really comes out of that customer research that I was talking about. One of the things that I found, the number one thing keeping people out of CSA programs was getting things in their box they didn't like or not being able to choose what was in their box. And so that was a core thing from the beginning of Harvie was how do we help a farm do customized boxes at scale? Because that obviously sounds scary, right? So, that's part of the difference is it's really the best practices are built right into Harvie. And so that's a really different thing than Small Farm Central.
Okay, because CSA is always sounds like a great idea until the person signs up and gets their first or second or third delivery, and every 3 deliveries has 2 heads of lettuce.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. So talk to us a little bit too, because I want to dive into CSA because most of our audience is well versed in what CSA is, but I know a few of them are kind of like, okay, so, this whole CSA thing, it sounds good. Talk to us about why people like the CSA model.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't always even refer to what we do at Harvie as CSA anymore. I mean, it's certainly inspired by CSA, but if I have to call it something, I call it farm share, or I think of it as direct to consumer sales. I think CSA in some ways has become sort of a loaded term for me. And one of the things I learned in doing some of that research is that most people that I talked to had no idea what a CSA was. And it was sort of this term, like, what does it mean? And so, but I think for the farmer, the CSA is a great model, right? Because it's a subscription. In the end, it's basically a subscription business model. So I believe that it is a business that you can really grow. I mean, one thing that we've seen at Harvie, we do both one-time sales and subscription sales, but we see that 95% of the sales come in through aggregate sales coming through subscriptions, because it's just a way more powerful business model than doing one-off sales. So I think from a farmer perspective, that's probably one of the most powerful things and why it's been such a durable concept.
And the beauty of the other thing for the farmers too is, obviously if they decide to do like a standard CSA aspect, which is the community supported agriculture side, they're obviously trying to get a lot of the money up front and stuff. And that way they don't have to do marketing during the summer to try to sell the product that it's pre-sold. But then obviously there's massive downsides of that model too, right, Simon?
Yeah, obviously, like asking people to pay 100% upfront, which was the original model, is really difficult. And, then you're starting over from scratch every year. Oftentimes, we have like an auto renew model within ours. So, that was built into Small Farm Central at one point. But so like once someone signs up, they're a member until they cancel. That's one thing that can be added to a CSA model, which I think is really helpful. But it's not most farms aren't doing that even today.
Yeah. So talk to us about the Harvie model. So you went from, it was the member assembler, but then you moved over to more the customized box. And how does that all work?
Yeah, so that was the question we started to ask is, okay, we know that that's what consumers want, right? It's like, I always tell the stories, like it would be the moment where, like, say you get, you don't like kale or whatever. That's always the thing. You get like 5 pounds of kale with the CSA box,
Yeah.
But whether you like kale or not, but it's even worse if you don't, right? So say you don't like kale and you get that bunch of kale, and every time you open the drawer of your refrigerator, from a consumer perspective, you look in there and you see that kale and you're like, I should learn to love kale. I should figure it out, or I just need to find a recipe. And it sits there for 3 weeks. It turns black, moldy and gross, and then they throw it away. And I always say that moment when they throw it away is the moment they're like, I'm not going to join again next year, right?
Yeah. And I think, Simon, even for people that are well suited to eating a lot of vegetables, like for myself, my wife and I, this year, we actually are getting a CSA share because we're moving, transitional, all this stuff. But I was still able to plant some things. So I had plenty of squash and cucumbers this year. But when our CSA showed up with squash and cucumbers, even though we're incredibly good vegetable eaters, that ended up going to my in-laws, which again, we didn't waste it. It went to my in-laws. But still, if there had been a customized share experience, we could have opted out of those crops.
Right. Yeah. So, that was a lot of the first year of Harvie, is trying to figure out, like, how do we provide a customized share experience? So basically people sign up for, like, from a consumer's perspective, they sign up for a box size. Like at Harvie Farms Pittsburgh, we have pretty high prices, and I think that's something we should talk about, like average order values, because we're at $49.79 and $109.
Okay, wow.
Our price points. And so people sign up for a particular price point. They can get that in a different schedule, either weekly, bi-weekly, or every 4 weeks is what we offer at Pittsburgh, although, people can do other things as well. And then people can obviously schedule around their vacations or whatever they need to do there. And then, but as far as from a customization perspective, then one of the neat things that we do is we allow each member to set preferences of what they like and what they don't like. So, I don't like beets. So I'm going to set beets as a 0. I never want to see that in my box. And I'm going to say I love tomatoes or whatever things I love are. And then on a weekly basis, I know like farmers, especially at the beginning, when we started talking about this, got really stressed out and they're like, how is this even going to work? How am I going to figure out what to harvest or whatever? And it actually, you almost do the same thing you do in a CSA. You're going to do your field walk. You're going to go out, look at what's out in the field, and then put that into the system. But then what we do, so you just put aggregate numbers into the system. We call that the harvest estimate. And then we run an algorithm that matches the harvest estimate against each person's preferences and how much should go in their box, and then sort of proposes a best box for each member based on what you have available. A lot of benefits to this, which we could talk about, but then they can then go in and customize some things if they want to add on extras. We have over 100 items a week with Harvie Farms Pittsburgh, and a lot of our farms are doing much more of that as well. And then, we provide some tools for how you actually pack boxes. We could talk about that a little bit as we go along here. So that's basically how the customization works.
Gotcha. Okay. So you had Harvie, you were working with hundreds of farms around the country, and then COVID hit this spring and you guys started thinking about Harvie Pittsburgh, as you call it. So talk to us about how that model changed from what you were previously doing.
Yeah, well, it's actually even before COVID.
Okay. So you had the idea and it just helped.
Yeah, I mean, what was happening is last fall, so Neil, as I said, he ran a farm cooperative here in the Pittsburgh area, and we sort of watched that cooperative go out of business last fall. They just had declining sales, and it just eventually led to them going out of business. And so as they were going out of business, I was getting sort of frustrated that we didn't have a really good farm that wanted to run Harvie here in Pittsburgh. And I just said, hey, Neil, we should go and do this and do home delivery. I was already calling 2020 the year of home delivery at the end of last year. And obviously we should talk about home delivery as well. And so we should go. Is that the way you remember it, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, it had been this nagging question that I think you were tossing around for a while of, can we scale up? Can we do home delivery? And then we just decided to try it out. But, January and February, it felt like a big question mark. It wasn't until March and April hit that it was like, okay, I think we're onto something here.
Because the challenge that no one in Pittsburgh wanted to do a CSA with Harvie. And I think the one thing too is you've got a lot of farmers who love to grow crops. I mean, that's why they farm, is they love to grow things. That's myself included. But the marketing side of it, just like they don't want to go talk to people. They don't want to go spend a whole day delivering around town. And another thing farmers tend to be challenged at doing and just don't like either is outsourcing. So they don't want to partner with other people. Just in our work with farmers every day, we see that. And so what you guys are doing with Harvie Pittsburgh is you guys are buying in from those farms and then going ahead and you're doing the marketing, aggregation and distribution.
That's right. Yeah. So I think for us, and part of as we started to explore this last fall, was talking to some key farms in the Pittsburgh area that we knew were growing at some kind of scale and were looking for new markets. And so we started with 2 or 3 or 4 really good farms that we knew could service this and wanted to do it. So, and then they were like, essentially what you're saying is they're like, we don't want to do this, but you should definitely do it. And I'm like, you should do it. And they're like, no. And I said, okay, well, fine, we have to do it. So,
and it worked.
It's working. Yeah. I mean, we set a fairly low, I think we set a goal of 250 members when we started. And that was end of January. I think we sort of first announced it. And then of course COVID hit, and now we have, I think we're doing about 650 weekly deliveries. So that's something like over 1,000 members total. So it's definitely grown way beyond what we thought it would. Okay.
And so now talk to us how this works for the farmers.
You want to talk about that, Neil?
Sure. I mean, in some ways we are like a wholesale account for the farms. You know, we're in a weekly or more than weekly conversation with them about what's available, what things are looking like, and trying to project out what we think we could use from them. So, you know, really, we try and keep it simple for them. But I think, unlike a wholesaler, we're really trying to ask them what's good on the farm right now, and what do you have a lot of that you'd like us to either feature or run, or what is better if we just wait until next week to bring it on. So similar to a CSA, we're trying to use the farmer knowledge to really dictate what we're prioritizing and making available.
And do you try to, before the season even starts, kind of like, not I'd say contract with them, but more of like, hey, I'd like for you to grow this for me during the season?
I would certainly recommend that if we were starting from scratch. Like Simon implied, we were fortunate enough to have enough time spent in this marketplace to really know some of the relationships and players that we could trust and lean on. So we didn't have to get that technical before we started, but it wouldn't hurt for sure. But so far we've been able to just rely on the known players that we're partnering with.
And I think that's the next level. As we go forward, and as we've proven that there's a sales channel here, I think like that is something that we're going to be doing more of, is talking to farmers and saying, hey, like, for example, one of the main farmers here is now putting all of their winter production, 10 high tunnels into production just for Harvie, and they're not going to have any other sales outlets. They were doing some restaurant sales and farmers markets before. Maybe they're still doing their farmers markets, but so like we're already seeing that sort of organically happening, if you will. But I think the key thing here, which could get a little confusing, is the way that I saw Harvie Farms Pittsburgh is that not that Harvie wants to go and like own 100 distribution centers across the country or something, but more as like a model for, or I was just asking this question, is like, how do we scale up local food? Like, yeah, it felt like this was what it was, but I just wasn't really seeing it happening. It was really frustrating to me. And so like to do it, to go out and like just, Neil and I were talking, like we spent so much time just on packaging, like how many conversations we had on what's the packaging going to look like? And it's simple what we're doing in the end, but like there's a lot of trial and error that's gone into that, And so now we want to take that and give it to other farms that could do this, or other distributors who could do this. I mean, that's really the goal going forward.
Okay, so you got the farms that bring in the product to you, then it delivers to people's homes. Now, with the aggregation side of this, so you obviously have to have an aspect for overhead. The farmer gets more of a wholesale price. And what's your marketing for this look like?
Yeah, so as I said, we had lots of connections in the Pittsburgh area as far as marketing. We got good PR. We got a couple nice on public radio in the area. So we also brought in a PR firm. We did Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising, some email marketing, different things like that. And so, but obviously with COVID-19, it's just been very easy. Like we are not limited on sales. We could probably be doing 3 times what we're doing now, from a sales perspective. And that was what I was worried about at the beginning. Neil remembers me being like, how are we going to find 250 people that want to do this?
Yeah, it's been wild. And Simon, I think the other piece of the marketing, especially now that we're up and running, is our Refer a Friend program, which has just been a huge success. Nothing like a happy customer to spread the word, and giving them a little financial incentive to do so has proved to be very effective.
Okay, so now you had the lowest cost box is like a $49 box, you said. And what do you say is like the value that's in there, or can you figured out a way to actually give it at a retail value?
Well, so the way Harvie works is that you're putting in, like that's endemic to the system, is that you're putting in like essentially a retail value to each product. So it's getting about that much retail value in it. We do charge a $6. So the way we do charge a $6 delivery fee on it. And then we do reduce. So, and then we can talk about couriers and how we do that. So we actually don't own a vehicle for this distribution business. Amazingly, we contract all of that out to a courier company. So they charge about $9 a delivery. So we build some of that extra, that that sort of slot between the 9 and the 6 in the share. So they get a little bit less product than they pay for.
Gotcha.
They pay for the delivery.
Yep, that makes sense. And do you have a thought of ever doing your own private delivery, or is that something where that $9 price point is something you're like, we can't afford to touch this?
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, like we just did it as far as a simplicity thing.
Yes,
and I think
absolutely.
like if people are thinking about home delivery, which probably everyone in your audience that's selling direct to consumer is thinking about that right now. You know, if as far as like farms or distributors are coming on Harvie, we work with them to find a courier company in their area and can contract with them and find a good deal for them. But, you know, in the end, you probably, I tell people if they're asking me about it, just figure it's going to cost you $10 delivery, whether you do it yourself or someone else does it. You might be able to do a bit better, but.
Well, I mean, if you're in a very compact city, it's obviously quicker between them. But the problem with the compact city is traffic. So it's almost like the same thing.
Well, it's certainly a density game, you know, like certainly, you know, and I think we will be looking at that over the next couple of years, but for now, we're very happy. We have a really good relationship with the courier company, and they're doing a great job.
Simon, I think it's worth noting too that, you know, this winter as we were trying to scheme out the model, we heavily considered making it free delivery and kind of just eating that cost or burying that cost somewhere, feeling like we were nervous that people might, you know, have reservations about adding a delivery cost onto them. And I mean, I don't know if I can think of one single instance where a person has said, I would love this, but that delivery cost really, you know, turns me off. It's been amazing that's been a no-brainer for people, I think, to see the value in that delivery.
Well, I think that you've now, I mean, this is the beauty of the age we are in is DoorDash and Uber Eats, is people now are used to paying for that. So to them, it's just normal.
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah, and the convenience aspect, and of course the aspect of not having to go to a site where they may have to wear a mask or something like that, so they can stay in their home. Obviously, you're bringing something right to their door, and they're good with vegetables and other products for the week. So talk to us about the range of products you have in the boxes or you have offered on the store.
Sure. So, you know, that's an ongoing seasonal experiment, but we really still want it to be very produce forward, produce heavy, and that's the focus of the box. And that's kind of what we feature the most in the box. But I think we also, you know, the price points we mentioned sound kind of crazy, even as like a former CSA farmer myself. I never would have thought about charging those kind of numbers for a CSA box. But it's really, I think, you know, like Simon was saying, it's not CSA, it's really grocery. It's like local foods grocery. And so the diversity of foods includes a lot of other staples beyond produce. And so we have a lot of milk and cheese and eggs going out the door, staples like bread and honey and syrup, grains, and I'm probably forgetting a whole host of, you know, a lot of jarred goods, value-added products. If it can be, you know, grown and preserved or made into a food product here, we're happy to use it. So
do you have mushrooms in there?
We do have some local mushrooms. So all that kind of stuff really changes it from thinking about how much do you pay for your vegetables per week to how much do you pay for your groceries.
The meat as well. Right.
There'd be the meat option as well.
Oh, wow. So yeah, you got the full gamut there.
Yeah, it's like I was saying, I've been like talking Neil into, I was like, Neil, can you get me some half and half? The only time I have to go to the store is to get half and half. And so you got me some half and half. But like my goal is never to have to go to the grocery store again.
Yes. Those organic bananas, I think, is the thing in our house.
That'll be the one problem, I guess.
So I know back when you were running the member assembler part, you wrote a book called Cultivating Customers. What prompted you to write that at that point?
Yeah, I just saw that it was marketing is always a difficult piece of a farmer's life. I mean, as you said, a lot of farms are great at growing things, but not that great at telling their story and getting the word out about what they do. And if you don't get the word out about what you do, then all the growing you do is not going to amount to very much. We got to sell what we grow. And, you know, I've always come from a very like a business forward approach to running a farm. And in fact, like as I grew up on a farm and went to college for technology and wasn't that interested in farming. But as I got like reinterested in it in college, like for me, it was always could this be a living? Because I know how hard it is to really take care of your land and grow great produce. And it's like, it's not something you can do 10 hours a week, right? It's probably 80 hours a week. You know, and I grew up on a farm where my parents were part-time farmers. And so that's always been my question from the beginning. And so I feel like I keep trying to answer that question. It's like, can we make raising food in this way economically sustainable? And I just keep asking that question, you know, in more and more complex ways.
What do you feel some common mistakes that farmers make when they are trying to market?
Well, I think, you know, one of the main things about, I've had to think about it less this year because everyone's sold out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're taking me back to the old days right now.
Well, and I guess my question is, Simon, do you think we're going back to the old days, or do you think that this is a new reality? That's the $1 million question.
There's several $1 million on that question. It's so hard to tell. I mean, obviously we're bringing new people into local food that never bought it before. I said, you know, when my ex mother-in-law texted me and was like, I really want to get a box of that meat from you guys. And she's like a Walmart shopper and, you know, always looking for the lowest price. I'm like, wow, if she's texting me, something has like drastically changed, you know. She's a wonderful woman, but I just wouldn't expect that. And so, you know, I think some of those people will be a little less sticky for us to keep around. And I guess that's one of the things I was thinking about a lot in the spring is like in the spring, you could have just you probably put up a Google Doc and like tell people to buy a whole cow and they're going to do it. Right. But long term, there will be a reversion to the mean here. It's just how far back do we go? But I think we come to a higher level than we were before. I hope.
Well, I think absolutely, you know, the hope is that, more people, and with software like what you are working with, then that actually makes it easier. And they say, oh, this isn't that hard. I can actually make this work.
Yeah, we're seeing, and that's been really the most fun part about Harvie, and especially like in the middle of the shutdowns related to the pandemic, and like to be distributing food to people just felt so good. And how the comments that we get from people are just amazing. I think of one where because it is this magical consumer experience, it just shows up on your doorstep, and Neil and the staff down at the warehouse, they do this beautiful job of like we should talk about how the packaging works, but it's just like folded up like beautifully, and you open it up, it's like a present, and everything's in there, and you get your cheese and your coffee and your vegetables, and everything looks so beautiful. And so people really love it. I mean, we had one person I know last week who emailed us and said like, I'm moving, and my first thought was not what dentist or doctor I'm going to use, but what's my Harvie share going to be in my new area that I'm moving to? It's just like, wow.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. All right. So talk to us a bit then, Simon, about, because you've got the model that works. Now you're trying to replicate it across the country. So how is that going to work?
Yeah, I think I'm just really in the middle of exploring that. And that's the question I've been asking myself all summer is like, wow, this thing's really working well. Like, where does it go from here? And I think, like I said, I want other people to do this in other areas. And, you know, now that we've shown that it can be done, we want to work with either farmers that are willing to, I mean, the aggregation is really important, right? Because, so here's the problem that all the farms are going to face when you start talking about home delivery is it's really logistically challenging. Now, obviously it can be done. We're doing 650 of them a week. It can be done, but it's hard. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's expensive. And so the problem is if you're just doing like a $20 CSA box or something of vegetables and it costs you $10 to get it there, then it just doesn't make sense really for you or the customer to do it. And so you need a higher average order value. And so we're getting like an average order value of around $70. That's one of our key things that we're looking at. Okay. So we're getting a $70 average order value. Now, how do you get the $70 average order value? Is you have all the items that Neil's talking about. You know, 100 items. And then that's difficult, right? To do all the aggregation and the logistics. And it's almost like a completely different business than farming. Obviously it's a distribution business. And so, you know, we were hoping that some farms will be able to take this on. We're hoping that some distribution companies will be able to take this on. And so we're just exploring that right now. And then a lot of our Harvie farms are also expanding in that area. So they already are using us, and now they're like, okay, I'm going to add on meat, and I'm going to add on this and that. And, you know, we're going to do home delivery. And so,
yeah. So you guys provide like the playbook to set up your own Harvie distribution aspect. Okay, cool. So I know you did mention packaging. Let's talk about that, because that is something that actually is something that I know, for a while there when the whole box craze was happening, the Hello Fresh craze. I know you and I talked about this. I got a few different ones just to check out like how they did it in the boxes and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of thought that goes into that.
Yeah, there is. I'll let Neil talk a little bit about that. He did a lot of the footwork on it.
Yeah, we did some of the same kind of things you did, Michael, just, testing things out, kind of getting a sense for what is working for other companies. And then also just trying to see how do we control the costs, and how do we do this as simply as we can, but professionally as we can at the same time. And then, just a lot of trial and error. But, and I guess another detail for our situation was like, we literally tried this year out as a pilot. We thought that we could be sitting here in September and being like, well, that was a fun experiment, but what are we going to do next year? Because that didn't go anywhere. So, we weren't ready to buy plastic totes or things that were more of a long-term commitment. So we knew from the beginning we were going to use cardboard to get this accomplished, and then we just kind of build around that. We just customized a cardboard box and looked around at different ways to insulate that box and came up with a thermal liner, pretty simple, like kind of bubble liner that fits inside there. And then searched around for different types of ice packs that we could use and found one that we really liked. It's more of like an ice brick. It's nice and flat and reusable. And then just using a clear plastic liner inside of that, which seals everything that the consumer is getting away from the packaging, so that it's just a new sterile environment each time. But our crowd is still the CSA type of crowd to some extent, and they've been craving to reuse and return packaging. And so we do reuse packaging, and the courier, it provides that service for us, and our customers love it, and they seem really excited because you're talking about these other services. They're one-way services, and there's just a lot of waste in the packaging. And as much as people hate throwing out kale, they also hate throwing out packaging too.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about, does that packaging fold flat for them to return it, or is it just they just keep it square in the box shape?
Yeah, it's still a work in progress, but yeah, the couriers encourage everybody to fold their boxes flat, and the liners just and the ice pack just lay on top, and they can just sort them out in their trucks, and then we have like a cleaning process we go through when they return, and sort them out and go from there.
And what is your percentage of returns?
We're tracking that. It seems to be about 2/3. There's always like these fluctuations, but it seems about like 2/3 is where we find ourselves for most things.
So you'll probably get at least 2, if like 2.5 uses for every single.
Yeah, and it seems to be different. Like the cardboard box wears out, and we do recycle those. Even if we do get them back, they start to wear out. But the ice packs, are able to be used over and over again.
So when folks sign up for this, obviously you've probably done this once, and so you have to figure out, an ongoing aspect, or maybe you were signing up people over a number of months. What's the process that they go through? I mean, like if they sign up on a Wednesday, when would they get their first delivery?
Go ahead, Simon.
Okay, let's see how that works. So they basically it's a rolling sign up. I mean, that's the way Harvie works always, is like a rolling sign up as long as it's open. So they would just get the way our schedule works. So Neil actually just sent out, it's Thursday today in the afternoon. So Neil just sent out what we call the harvest estimate, right? So the emails just went out to customers. And then they have about 24 hours to make changes to their box if they want to, or put it on hold if they want to, whatever. So they'd have until tomorrow noon. And then tomorrow noontime, Neil will pull that and basically send the harvest list to the farms. They harvest over the weekend. We receive on Monday, and then we deliver on Tuesday and Wednesday. Point being, by now on Thursday, sign up is locked for next week. So although we can do one-time orders as well in the meantime. But anyway, so they would either get like the next week or like 2 weeks from now, depending on when they sign up.
So when does I missed that part. When does the farmers get the order list from you?
In this case, it's about 2 days before receiving. So on like a Friday noon, and then we want it at our distribution center by the end of the day on Monday.
Okay, so probably most are harvesting on like Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, and then we're starting a second ordering period now to make it more complicated, but but yeah.
Okay, very cool. So that gives them enough time. Usually that makes sense. I'm just thinking from a farmer's perspective, trying to think of that all through.
Well, and Michael, I would say, you know, especially as our first year, we really went to the farmers and said, what works for you? We kind of worked backwards from them and said, you know, we need this to fit into your schedule as well. And so a lot of our weekly routine came from farmers telling us what worked for them.
And probably too, I mean, there probably is some guesstimate with them too. So if like you're ordering, let's say, topped orange carrots, you probably have a pretty much good estimate of what you're using every single week. So they could just pull that out of inventory.
Yeah, and in fact, today when I put the list out to the customers, Harvie automatically can generate a pick list as is. So I can send the farmers a rough draft of their orders today, and then I just update that when the period closes.
Oh, that's super nice.
So yeah, they do get a heads up.
Yeah.
I mean, the key is that everything is pre-ordered, right? So we have very little shrink in this. I think, you know, you probably order a little bit extra from the farms each week just for random.
Yeah, you know, a couple % of extra just for unexpected damage, et cetera, but it's very small.
Gotcha. So for 1,000 pounds of carrots you need, you ordered 1,050 or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. So how is rolling out this? Is this like something you're hoping to roll out over the winter then? Did the regional model?
We're already doing it. We're in conversations with a farm that's using us already in Long Island, but looking for expansion. So, you know, takes about 6 weeks at least, you know, to get everything rolling. And so for the most part, it'll be going into the next growing season, depending on what the growing season is, where people are, that we'll be looking to do it. But yeah.
Have you had any pushback from farmers who say that this is going to, you know, I guess change things too much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can ruffle some feathers, you know, in some cases. I think to be honest, when we did this in Pittsburgh, I think there are some farms that felt a little threatened by what we did here. But I think that we've shown that there's the thing is, there's a much, much bigger market for local food than we think there is. It's not 0.5%. Hopefully it's 5 to 10%, you know? And so that's always been what Harvie's been about, is expanding the local market for local food. And this year's a, you know, anomalous year, so it's hard to tell. But I think that the farms that sell to us, you know, I mean, the thing is, I think when I think about it, it's like the smallest farms are going to have trouble with a model like Harvie, like this Harvie distribution model, because, you know, essentially what we're looking at and when we're coaching distributors that are looking to do this is about 50 to 60% of the retail prices going back to the farm, basically. So that's the cost of goods sold number. So essentially we're going to take the farm's wholesale price and we're going to double it. And in the doubling, there is where the operations budget comes out of. And we could talk a little bit about that. You know, that pays for the warehouse, that pays for the boxes, that pays for Neil, that pays for all the employees, that pays for the, you know, the marketing and for the software. And so, so the smallest farms are going to have trouble producing at a price that's going to make sense at a retail price for that.
But the smallest farms are probably more geared towards doing their own home delivery, very customized, or a farmer's market. The smallest farms, CSA is not a great fit for them usually.
Yeah. So the smallest farms need to get the full retail value, but for the farms that can produce at some amount of scale, or, you know, I think as I've talked to some other distributors that are a little farther along in this, where I think we can help some of the smaller, like the smallest farms, is we can go to them and say, you know, hey, can you grow an acre of garlic for us? And this is the price that we can pay. And we can buy that whole acre of garlic,
guaranteed,
for example, that starts to be attractive, I think, maybe for some of the like smallest farmers. But like, I think the farmers that are like at more of mid scale, they sell to some wholesale accounts. I mean, they're really the ones that are going to be those key farmers in these arrangements. Does that make sense to you, Neil?
Yeah, entirely. Although I also think about the fact that, among our producers that we work with, some of them are very small and they're just specialized. And I guess we start with the cut flower grower, who's actually an urban farmer in Pittsburgh, but it happens to be a good fit for her, and she can sell something that's flexible. Whatever she's not selling at her markets, she can offer to us, and it's close by, and so she can handle that. And so there's a tea farm that we got some dried tea from. It's very specialized small farm. Things like that, you don't have to be large. Just like Simon said, you just have to find the right product.
Okay, because you can vary in the software how much product is available from that person.
Exactly.
So you can almost like take overages. So they say, oh my gosh, this week we're going to have 30 extra bouquets. You can just kick 30 bouquets in there, and the first 30 people that order it, the people that have preference for that, the software is just going to kick it into their share.
Yeah, I think that always kind of shocks farmers, and they're like, they'll stop telling me about something. I'm like, no, I want to still hear about it. I don't need 650 of these to make it useful to me.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, actually for me, I'm a very, very small farmer. And all we did actually was winter squash. That was all we planted this year. We did about a half acre of that. And that's actually going to 2 CSA farms that we've contracted with. And again, it's just because I can't get myself out of growing things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's actually looking really good. And the beauty of that is, again, and I think a lot of people looked at the CSA model and love the CSA model, but there is some inherent problems. Is that a small farm, I'd say under 5 acres, it's tough for them to grow the 40 or 50 crops. Yes, you can grow it, but it's tough to grow them incredibly well. And I learned this when I was talking to, I'm trying to remember his first name at Featherstone Farm. Is it Jack at Featherstone Farm?
Yeah, it's Jack. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Jack and I, we toured his farm, looking in his greenhouses and stuff. And they were talking about the crop of carrots that was in there. And we were like, oh my gosh, you make a lot more money with winter greens or something. And we got talking about how they've got that farm set up. Is that they had a wholesale manager whose job was literally to care for 5 crops. And then they had someone else who at that time was responsible for the other 35. Because what they said is those 5 crops, if you can focus so closely on doing them well, you pretty much can double your yield, or at least it's a massive yield jump. And that's what really makes you competitive with those crops. And so if farmers can really focus on growing what they're best at and what they can really focus on doing well, 5 or 6 crops, they can afford to sell them for a lot cheaper, especially in a Harvie model that knows that's going to buy it, because they're getting better yields. They're spending a lot less time because you're at economies of scale now for that. And you can cater the fertilizer and the water directly to those crops instead of trying to treat all 40 or 50 crops in many different families with just like a one broad stroke.
Right. I think we're starting to see like a bifurcation in the farms that work with Harvie. Like there's some farms that, like one of our main farmers actually used Harvie for the first couple of years, but then they stopped using it because like they were too busy farming. Right. And so I think what we're going to see is some farms that like transition into almost becoming a distribution business, like this farm in Long Island that's going to do distribution for us there. They know all the local farmers and they don't want to grow as many things. And so they're going to go that way. And some of these other farms are going to specialize, more in the growing piece and not so much the marketing, the distribution and everything. So I could see that starting to happen already.
So do you help when you start to work with these partnerships? Do you do some research on the marketplace before you just dive in?
Yeah, right now it's just we're just having conversations with people, and I mean we're not there's certain markets that I think that we would be really good in, or I think there certainly has to be some kind of, we're thinking there has to be some kind of like urban center there to get that density of deliveries and enough farms. But yeah,
I mean, like right here in our local Dayton, Cincinnati area, I know there are several already distribution companies. I think one's called like Green Bean or Market Wagon or something. So maybe actually 2 of them. And so it's always wondering to see like, would a third one fit? But I think too, it's like, what is that third model, or what your model is different than everyone else? And I think the software side of things can make a big difference.
Yeah, it's software and marketing. I mean, I think one of the things that I've thought about really clearly, maybe, especially with the book I wrote on marketing, is that if you're going to sell direct to consumer, you need to have a marketing budget. And that's part of the Harvie Farms Pittsburgh model, this Harvie Farms local model, is that we basically took 10% of the gross of the company and said we are going to spend that on marketing. Of course, we really haven't needed to that much this year, but I think for long-term sustainability, that having a marketing budget is really important. And like for most farms, they haven't had a marketing budget at all. And I don't really blame them, because we don't really understand how to spend marketing dollars in a sustainable manner. But like that's what we're doing here at Harvie, is that we're building a growth marketing team here that can bring customers to the distributors. I mean, I think that's a really important part of that model. If we can find someone who can do the distribution, we can provide the sort of software, the consultation, and the customers to them. So that's our model.
And what they focus on is the networking and connections with the local farmers to fill those baskets.
Sure. And like what Neil's doing, it's just like endless details. I'm sure he could tell you 3 stories from this week of like, some problem that went wrong with the distribution. The zucchini came in too small and then we didn't have enough of them, or they miscounted the boxes, or, so it's just endless details, So.
Yeah. Well, too, I think if you have new farmers you're working with, as a lot of these new farmers don't understand the standards out there. And so, as part of it, I think is sure of an education of, okay, so this is what the actual standard is for this product, or, how you would actually package it, or how you cool it to make sure it arrives to the correct temperature and that sort of thing.
Yeah, Neil has a lot of experience with that over the years with this cooperative and everything. I don't know if you have anything on that, Neil.
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess what's actually running through my mind at the moment is just about our customer base and the unique relationship that Harvie and CSA farmers and local food providers in general, I think, have experienced in one way or the other. But I was just thinking how, you could say that technology is taking some of the farmer out of the center of the picture, or something like that, or like maybe it's more mechanized or just technical. But at the same time, I feel like it's also very human. I feel like the interactions we end up having with our customer bases, the expectation from them is that they're working with humans to do something that's very authentic. And so when things don't go wrong, my assistant manager actually has a background in grocery, and he keeps shaking his head every time something goes wrong for us and we have an interaction with a customer. Often that interaction ends up being such a human experience of like, hey, we get it, we're on your side, you're working hard, and we're here for you, and like we just appreciate what you're doing. Whereas in a traditional retail, it's like, I want what I got paid, or I want to get what I paid for, and if it doesn't go right, I'm automatically frustrated. And so I feel like Harvie actually still provides some tools for it to be a very human experience. That our customer satisfaction, I still shake my head too. I just can't believe how generous our customer base is to be on board with what we're doing.
Yeah, it's the clicklist horror stories.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, my wife was on hold with them for like multiple hours, and if you don't keep the web browser open on your phone, then you lose them. And she was so frustrated with that. So
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Simon and Neil, what would you leave us with? It's really, I wanted to catch up today because I know that you've done some very interesting things the last couple of years, really kind of trying to revolutionize, what that customized box system looks like. And now you've moved to a totally new direction. That's why I wanted to bring you on and talk about that. I guess, what would you say to the small farmer, which still feels like they're struggling with growing their farm?
Everything, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not going to be a one size fits all for anybody. That's what we all are aware of. And we're just trying to create a different model that's going to help at least a section or a segment of the small farm population to thrive and dare I say, pivot this year. And it's not going to fit for everybody, but I do think, like someone's saying, that what we're really doing is turning people who were either on the fence or not even realizing the choice they had, and just making it so convenient and easy for them to support local farms, that the number of people at the table is just so much bigger that I think small farms are going to indirectly, if not directly, benefit from this broadening of the customer base as well.
Right. Yeah, I think one thing that I think about is with Harvie specifically, is like I wanted to take away every possible reason someone could say no to buying local food. I wanted to take that away from them. It's like, it's too hard. Okay, we'll deliver it to your house. I want milk, okay, we'll figure out how to do that, So I think that we've I think there can be like a little bit of a pushback in the sort of small farm community against like that piece, like that, like really being customer friendly, or they feel like it's getting away from some ideal. But I think like the experiences that we have with customers are really magical, like he's saying, and that Neil's saying, is you make this easier for people, they buy it, and then they support us to grow more, and we want to grow more small farms, and we want to make this, they really want to support people too, support farms too, and they understand that. And so, certainly it's not a one size fits all, not for everyone. But we think it is a model that local food can be scaled. And I think, we have to scale up a little bit to get that next level as a community.
Well, I think, we have to keep scaling, because in order for us to get the infrastructure, technology, the resources to support the small farm system, there has to be a certain number of us. Because one of the things we work on is we work closely with Johnny's on some of their tool development. And, one of the things that we throw back and forth is, well, is there a big enough market to actually bring this to market? And, they're a company and their goal is to make money. So if there isn't, then some of these things just get, left in the prototype stage, or end up just not with the level of machining that could happen around them. It's we need more farms. I think that's the takeaway message. And you guys are working your hardest to figure out how to get more local food sold so more farms can be supported.
Definitely.
All right. Well, Neil and Simon, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it. And love what you guys are doing.
Okay. Thanks, Michael.
Have a good one.
So there you have it. Another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.